Okay, so we got a late start on the head gasket job today. The truck on the lift took up absolutely all of our time today. Have the deck surface prepped. It wasn't bad. Just hit it with some brake clean and wheeled it off. It's still nice and smooth. It's only got about, nope, race truck. It's only got about 10,000 miles or so on the rebuild, so everything still looks good. I'm gonna clean up the coolant that's sprayed along the side. That way we can see if it happens again. Got the new head right here, or that's not the new head, that's the old head. ARP 625s, fancy. This is the head as we took it off the motor. Not cleaned up or anything, so the O-ring's still in it. It's got about 10,000 miles on it since the rebuild, which is right before Lone Star Throwdown. Still see the rings look good. Just dirty. No cracks. We get this all cleaned up, ready to put back on. Alright, so we got the head all cleaned up and we are about ready to put it in. The surface, all the material scraped away, cleaned up, brake clean, dried, hit it again with the rag, all nice and clean. Made sure that we didn't dislodge any of the O-rings. See those clamp down into the head gasket, help hold the cylinder pressure in. That's clean. We also took and cleaned up the actual block surface same way. It's all nice and clean. No spots, no nicks or dings in the surface. Take and clean off all that coolant down there. Hopefully we can get this thrown in here pretty soon. Got the new head gasket, Cummins, MLS, factory, OEM, original head gasket. Just make sure there's no creases. Looks good, clean. It can only go on there one way correctly. So we're gonna take this, throw it up in the truck first. And the dowels. There we go. Now these holes here, you can see them. These usually tell you what version of head gasket it is. Usually the 2 holes in it, it is the original thickness and bore size. Anything with a 1 hole is going to be original bore size with the thinner thickness. And then Mal makes a gasket that's for over bore, but this one being a 20 over, it can still accept the factory head gasket. So lay it up in there, make sure that the dowels seat everywhere, make sure there's nothing in the way. These wires. I'm going to chain up the head, and we're going to throw that in the truck.
Searching for your trace in the dark, losing myself in the endless memories of the end right from the start. You're an obsession in my head, I can't forget your eyes. Your kisses burn my skin, I feel so empty inside.
So when we set the head down on the block, it's important to set it down square, not scrape the head gasket as you're putting it on. So we put the old studs in it to help guide it. These are ARP 2000s. They've been in the truck for probably 30,000 miles. And while I was on a single turbo, it made about 50 pounds of boost, and the truck was making 830 horsepower to the wheels. So they held pretty good, but as soon as we put the compounds on, the head gasket almost immediately blew. So we changed the head gasket, reused the studs. That was the 3rd time that these studs had been reused, and they're just not cutting it. And make sure they're all out. So we have ARP 625s, which each come individually packaged. You can get this out of there. They are stronger tensile strength. They actually have a torque sequence that's, I believe the torque is, let's see when I find it. Actually 150, and then for the ARP 2000s it's only 125. So you're actually supposed to torque these significantly tighter than the 2000 studs. So these should hold. We've got a fresh gasket on there. The head is O-ringed. We're actually going to torque these to probably 160 when they go in. They send a little packet of assembly lube from ARP. I like to have the big bottle on hand because this really doesn't do enough, in my opinion. You have to use every last drop of it, and there's no way to apply it evenly. This has a applicator brush that just makes it easier. And it's important when torquing down the head studs that there's enough lube on it so that the studs don't get bound up in the threads, or the washers don't catch on the nut or on the head itself and cause you to get a false torque reading. So using plenty of the lubricant is really important. So a couple things about the studs. There are two different sizes. There's 6 that are a little bit longer. They actually go in the exhaust row on the head. And then what I like to do to make sure I get good coverage is I'll put some ARP lube on a rag, and then I can rub the threads through it to make sure that I get a good amount on there before threading them into the block. And make sure the threads are clean, both sides, no burrs. I'll just take it. That good coverage goes in the hole. The coarse side goes down into the block, and the finer side is what the nut's gonna thread onto. There's 26 of those, so make sure you're comfortable. All right, so I've got all the nuts down on the studs. So just a recap, remember that the longer studs go in the exhaust row. Always blow out the holes that go down into the block, the threads. Make sure there's no oil, brake clean, coolant residue, or anything down in those threads that will obstruct the stud from being able to screw down into it. And then I run the studs all the way down with an electric impact or electric ratchet, and then back them off half a turn from the bottom so that they're loose and not bottomed out. And then the washers, they actually have a side that's a camfered side, I believe is what they call it, and that goes down. Lube on both sides of the washers, lube on the bottom face of the nut and on the threads, and then torque them or run them all down with the electric ratchet just to where they're snug down in the torque sequence that is recommended for torquing down the head. Once all that's done, clean up any extra ARP lube, and then get the torque wrench out. Make sure that it's in good working condition, because the torque spec on these is very important, and you do not want to have a torque wrench that doesn't work. You can end up with studs that aren't torqued down all the way, or actually break off the studs down in the block, which is not fun. So we're going to grab our torque wrench. We're going to start tightening these down. All right, so we got the studs in, torqued down. We did the 3-step torque sequence, 55, 110, and then finish it off with the 160. We're gonna let this sit overnight. We got a little bit of a late start. We've got work tomorrow. It's 1 a.m. We're going to finish this up tomorrow, and hopefully have it running and see if these studs hold.